I want to change the direction I take this podcast in a bit, and I want to talk more about relationships. Society is very split at the moment on whether it's for or against relationships, like long-term monogamous relationships, the kind of like stereotypical relationships we think of, because I'm seeing everything from think pieces on how women are more financially independent, they don't want to give that up to be in a relationship, and their social attitudes are not as aligned with men, particularly in like certain demographics, versus seeing articles on how people want to get married and they don't know how, they're struggling with dating. Dating is a chore and minefield, etc. I mean, hell, I'm forgetting the Vogue article that went viral recently on how having a boyfriend is cringe. I did get married recently, and I feel like this is a conversation I have a lot to contribute to. Not in terms of being like, oh my god, look at me, my marriage is so great. That's definitely not the point I want to make, but enough people have talked to me about how searching for a partner that they can explore marriage with, like the right person for them, dating is so difficult that I feel like it's something I want to talk about more now that I've successfully done it. I thought the perfect place to start would be with treating this kind of like an old school YouTube video essay and responding to, or giving my take, my opinion on Maddie Drasbeck, who hosts the podcast Emotionally Online. And she put out an episode recently titled "You Can't Self-Optimize Yourself into Finding Love." And that is one of the segments within the larger episode, but this segment is what I really want to touch on, because I think I can sum up the points I want to make in this new series as I explore this. And also, no tea, no shade to Maddie Drasbeck. I love her videos, I love watching her. I didn't agree with all of her opinions in this particular segment, which I'll get into, but yeah, this is not, I know tea, no shade to the person who asked her this question either, because this is a like fan sent question. So basically this question starts out with the person saying that they've done a lot of inner work, they feel like they're in a good spot to start dating, and they are ready, but they're not seeing that reflected in the people around them. The people who are interested in them are the people who haven't done that kind of inner work, and so now they're like, well, I don't have any options. And how do I make my peace with not having options? So one of the first points Maddie makes is that self-optimization isn't essential to find love, because you're deserving of love regardless of whether you've gone through the inner work or not. And that I do agree with. And then she goes on to say that you don't exclusively find love by being self-optimized, because there are plenty of, as she puts it, emotionally stunted people in relationships. And I'm like, yes, that's true. You don't need to be super self-optimized to be in a relationship, and you can be in one without having done all the work. But is that a relationship you necessarily want to be in? I don't know. I don't think you're ever done cooking, if I can put it that way. But I think about when I was younger and I was less mature, and I, my brain wasn't as fully developed, and some of those relationships I was in, they were not good relationships for me. So like, yeah, you can be emotionally stunted and still find love and still be in a relationship, but is that the relationship you want? And I think that's a part that she hasn't addressed, because she's also talking about how for so long people have told single people that if you work on yourself and you do all these things, then you'll find love. No, I don't. Doing the work is not the prerequisite to finding love, because ultimately, as she goes on to say, that finding love is all down to luck. And I think it's very easy once you're in a relationship to be like, yeah, no, it's because I did all the things and, blah, blah, blah. No, there is a huge amount of luck involved. And I definitely feel like I got into my relationship a few years ago, and I do feel like there is a level of amnesia that comes with that. And it wasn't even that long ago, but there is still a level of amnesia that comes with that, let alone people who've been in their relationships longer than I have been. So I'm not going to dispute that. And I'm also not saying that it isn't annoying to hear like, oh, just work on yourself. But I do think, like, ultimately the premise is getting into a relationship or finding a person is about luck. It does come down to luck and timing and whatever. The point of working on yourself is, well, Simon Clark has very neatly described before as proactive serendipity. The point of working on yourself is that you can create your own luck and put yourself in a better position to find the thing that you're looking for and to achieve whatever it is you want, like regardless of whether we're talking about dating or not. For example, I am naturally a homebody. I would say I'm quite introverted in that I recharge my battery a lot by being at home, being in my own space, being able to chill. A lot of my hobbies are focused at home. So for me to leave the house and be pretty social and stuff it takes an effort for me. So when I was single, I actively made the effort to leave the house, to go to parties, and when there were social gatherings where I was on the fence about going, I was tired or something, I pushed myself to go because I was like, you need to get out there and meet people. Did I actually meet anyone that, anything happened with? No. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I was putting myself in the best possible situation for something to happen. If I had stayed in my room all weekend, then there is a 0 chance that I would have met someone, versus if I'd gone out, maybe I would have hit it off with one of the people I talked to. And maybe I wouldn't have, but there's still like a 50-50 chance either something happens or it doesn't happen, right? And that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, it's proactive serendipity. It's about giving yourself the best possible chance at success. And so working on yourself, doing that inner work and healing and therapy and all that, is also about giving yourself the best possible chance for success. Because if I think about the years between my last relationship and when I got into my current relationship, I spent a lot of time working on myself, and I was not the same person at either of those bookends between finishing that one and starting this one. And a lot of those changes I made in that time were what allowed me to become successful when I did start this relationship. When I met the love of my life and I knew that this is my person, I didn't flub it because I didn't let any underlying issues I had affect that relationship, and it was able to be a much smoother process than if I hadn't done that. And it's not to say that you can't do it once you're in a relationship. Like, I could have met my partner and I could have not been as, like, I don't want to say healed, but in that process, and it still could have worked out fine, and I could have done more of that healing and learning in the relationship. But by working on myself first, it gave me a better chance to find that person. I do believe it gave me a better chance to find someone who was aligned with a more healed version of myself, and then for that to be more successful with less barriers and hurdles. One thing I always think about is what Dante Basco said when he was interviewed on Jana Varney's podcast, and this was back in 2015 I first heard this episode, so it was probably released like 2014, 2015, but it's stuck with me since then. And he was talking about his dating life, and from what he said, based on this podcast, he's dated a lot of people. And his thing was that the people you date are you. You are them. Like, they are a direct reflection of you. So if you don't like who you're dating, work on yourself and you'll get someone better. And that was the thing I lived by when I was single. And I did notice that difference in quality between the partners I was picking, between the end of my last relationship and then the start of my current one. I think that's also a big element that goes into it. It's also like the people you pick. I'm not going to say the people who are drawn to you, because you have that agency. I think broadly speaking, you get what you put out into the universe, and I know like this doesn't always hold true. This doesn't apply to like abusers looking for vulnerable people to be in relationships with. It doesn't apply to those people, but for the people who aren't like that, I think that does hold true. I think you get out what you put in, which is why I believe in doing the internal work. Maybe that means going to therapy or whatever it does mean for you, and healing that wound you have around relationships, because most people have some sort of wound. And actually, I don't even mean heal it fully, but acknowledge it, realize it's there, so that when it does pop up in arguments and things, you're not caught completely off guard, and you're like, okay, I have some more understanding of what's going on. I get why I'm reacting like this. And that in itself helps so much. I do think there is also something to say about this person's question, where they're saying that they've done all the work, they've built this life around themselves with their friends and family, and they're, healing, and now they're focusing on romance. And I think that there is this element of like compartmentalization that isn't super healthy always when it comes to talking about romance. I think that everything has its time and place. So if you are already focused on, school or career or something, and you don't want to be in a relationship, then fine. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying that there is a tendency to think about it as this separate thing. That once I had this, I will do this. That was something I very much struggled with when I was single. It was like, once I have X, then I can date. And then once I got X, then it became, well, X isn't good enough, now I need Y. Y isn't good enough, now I need Z. And I just kept moving the goalpost for myself. I think that is a very real problem that you can encounter. And that kind of sounds like what this person has done in their life. Like, they've done all these things and they've done the steps, and now they're like, why is there no reward at the end of it? I did all the things you were supposed to do for this. Which is the other thing, like, why are you doing all these things for this? If you're holding dating up here on a pedestal, like, to be able to date, you need to have good friendships, good connections around you, you need to have gone to therapy, you need to have done all these things. The point is to build that life for yourself, not because you want to date, right? You don't do all these things just because you want to date. It's almost like studying a subject you wanted to study versus studying a subject because you knew it would guarantee you career security at the end of it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with studying something because you knew it would guarantee you career security at the end of it, but you're doing something as a means to an end. You're not doing it for the thing. So if you're focusing on your friendships and stuff as a means to an end so that you can date, then you've got it twisted. You are the thing to focus on. Your friendships are the thing to focus on. If you build your life, then you will also naturally find the people who are aligned with that version of your life, with that kind of life. A life that doesn't sentiment. And that is a very heteronormative view of it, but it still applies regardless of who it is you want to date. I don't know, a lot of Maddie's argument comes down to luck is the secret sauce that no one's telling you. You can't self-optimize your way to love. The person also says in her question that she's attracting people, but they're not the types of people that she wants. So what Maddie asks is like, okay, if that's the types of people you're attracting, would you rather be single? Would you rather be with them? If you've already got this thriving single life, then why would you give that up for someone else who's not aligned with you and, you know, is wrong for you based on what you're saying? That I agree with. I do think a lot of it comes down to luck, but I think that you can position yourself to be lucky. That is something I strongly believe in. I believe in it in multiple avenues of life, but yeah. And so I think when it comes to dating, that's what it's really about, is maximizing your luck and what that means for you and how you choose to do it. So for some people it might be like healing, going to therapy, self-optimizing. For some people that might not be the move that they need to do, and that's fine. Their thing might be something else. I think in terms of proactive serendipity, this is something I've heard people say when it comes to being on dating apps, because the numbers are just way higher, because you're able to come across a wider number of people than you would if you were to meet them in person or whatever, and you can filter through those numbers quicker. I did meet my partner on a dating app. It worked out very well for us, clearly, but I don't know that that's the right answer for everyone, and I also don't know if I would still recommend that to people based on what I've heard about how dating apps are going and whatever. I really started hearing a lot of horror stories like after we got together, and we were both just like, we got off this boat at exactly the right time. But that's not very reassuring for people to hear who aren't in relationships. But yes, the point is, based on what I've heard about dating apps, I'm not sure that's the most helpful route to go down. But I do also believe that numbers are important, because if 5% of the people you meet are going to be decent people, then the more people you meet in total, then the more people then bigger number of people is encompassed in that 5%. If you meet 100 people, then that 5% is 5 people. If you meet 200 people, that 5% is 10 people, and then you have a bigger range to choose from. And so that's kind of how I feel about quantity versus quality. And there are also other things you can do to be proactively serendipitous, yes. Like moving, for example. If you live in an area where you're like, I have dated enough people, or there just aren't that many people, and I'm not finding my person, you can always move to not even necessarily a bigger city, but like a different place altogether. I wouldn't recommend it off the bat. Like, I know that one comes with a lot more hurdles to jump through, and it's a lot more time, money, whatever, energy consuming. Depending on where you are, I do think it is possible to stay where you are and do it, but it is also an option that you have in this life. I think that's everything I have to say on this topic. I think I've pretty much addressed, because really it's a pretty short segment in this podcast episode. It's 10 minutes and I've been recording for a lot longer than that, so I feel like I've pretty much touched on all the points I wanted to touch on. But yes, that's kind of my manifesto, I suppose. That's where I'm coming at it from, is that if you want love, if you want to be in a committed relationship, you want to be married, and you want a loving, healthy partnership, those things are dependent on a lot of luck. a lot of it comes down to luck, but you can also skew it so that luck plays in your favor. You can do things to be more lucky. And that's the premise I'm bringing into this new series on Vocally Annotated. But I also don't think that I am the end all and be all and the fan of relationship wisdom. Far from it. So I figured the better way to do it would be to consult people who are much more knowledgeable than I. And so this new series era of Vocally Annotated is coming with book club. So the first episode of book club will be focusing on this book. As you can see, I have a lot of things to say about it. I have a lot of notes and I'm very excited to record that episode. So yeah, stay tuned for the new book club series. And with that, I will see you guys in the next episode.